My most important role in life is as a mother. It's the
Yes.
role that I can't be replaced in. It's the role that is consistently that gives me back. Going back to my initial purpose, I think that being well, being at peace, is a prerequisite for doing work that is purposeful and creative and aligned. One of the big things is walking in the shoes of the people who you serve and understanding the context from their perspective. Being authentic is something that I really I value. I'm someone who talks about feelings. I think feelings are important. I think that the soft stuff is important. Um, I have a sense of humor. I'm intelligent. I work hard. I have a unique perspective. There are things that I'm very, very sure about in the businesses that I work on and where I don't want to compromise.
Today isn't about buzzwords. It maybe actually never is. It's about peace as a performance state and science that really fits lives. From AI to microbiome to everyday care and honest leadership, Dr. Aisha Pandor shows how builders turn everyday evidence into change people really can feel on a Monday. I welcome today for our ASP interview series Dr. Aisha Pandor. Warm welcome to you and thanks for sharing and being with us.
Thank you for having me, Jay. Looking forward to the conversation.
Quick intro about you before I hand over to you that you also can say a few words. Dr. Aisha Pandor grew up with stories of courage and service. She became a scientist, a founder, an investor, and a mother of three. Someone who believes peace isn't passive, it's power. She builds platforms that create dignity at scale and now leads woman-centered chronic care design. Today, we'll ask how she finds calm in the noise, how she designs care around real lives, and how she bridges Africa and America so innovation travels with heart. Aisha, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words about yourself?
Yes, sure. Thank you for that kind introduction from your side. I am Aisha Pandor. I'm a South African entrepreneur, scientist, investor. I'm, as you say, incredibly passionate about peace, alignment, purpose. I'm passionate about building. I think that humans are inherently creative, and one of our big missions in life is to unleash that creativity and build things that are meaningful to us and hopefully helpful to other people in the world. I have a PhD. Originally worked on gene therapy for inherited blindness, trying to help families who suffer with this awful condition that causes multiple generations to go blind, to not have this carried on through their bloodlines. Post that, have worked in the business world. Um, Started a business called Sweep South, which we grew to help 50,000 women in South Africa and beyond other countries on the African continent access work. Many of these women, primary caregivers, primary providers for families that included not just children, but nieces and nephews, grandchildren, parents, grandparents. And so um, making a dent on the community, in addition to homes and addressing the severe unemployment issue in South Africa. And then more recently, I've been involved as a co-founder in Pandora Health, where we help primarily women, but men as well, manage chronic health conditions. And again, going back to my initial purpose, I think that being well, being at peace, is a prerequisite for doing work that is purposeful and creative and aligned. And so, being healthy and at peace from a physical perspective is as important. So that's what we're doing with Pandora Health, is helping people who suffer in many cases for years with conditions to have the support that they need to be well.
Wow, this is awesome. Before we dive into topics and things you're really passionate about, let's give us a chance to really get to know you a little bit on a deeper level. Maybe just take us through a real day, home, clinic, or tea room. When did you realize peace wasn't a luxury but an operating system?
So I think, as with many of these things, it's not just a once-off realization. My experience is that I started off, I would say, was sort of being a young child working in a lab with the petri dish of cells that are they're biological beings. They do their own thing. And just to give you an example of sort of realizing that peace is the way is, I remember one morning coming to check on my cells as a student in their petri dish, and they had all died, all of them. And something had gotten into the the hood, and infected them, and, this I'd done weeks and weeks of work, and it was destroyed in one evening. And there was nothing that I could do. It was out of my control. And so I had to start again. And there are moments like that in your life. I have 3 children, I have 2 companies, I'm a co-founder in a venture capital fund, and I've realized how much is actually out of my control with all of these things that I do. And so I think, sort of that moment, I've had so many like that, and I still haven't quite learned the lesson consistently, but I do tend to now come back quicker to, this is not in your control, and maybe there's a lesson here. And take a deep breath, as we did at the beginning of this conversation, and then try and figure out what to do from a place of calm.
So when you have these moments that then you come back to calm, what
Yeah.
do you realize what you have done differently? What has changed inside of you?
Yes, so I think it's a practice that I started to practice consistently post 2020, when we had to deal with the pandemic, and it felt like these moments are now not just every now and then, it's every day and multiple
Uh,
times a day often. And so I think one of the things is, as we said, is really just stopping. I think you can get onto this train, this worry train, this stress train, this everything is going wrong, and it can become self-perpetuating. And so what I learned how to do is, and it's incredible how you can use the breath for this, is just
uh,
to take a deep breath and then slow down and slow the racing thoughts and not be so much in the head, and just be
yeah,
present for a second. And then realize that I have the capacity to deal with this.
uh,
And where I don't, I have the capacity in terms of the network, or there are people who can help. So, uh, I think the worst kind of the worst example of this for me was dealing with the pandemic, where there was so much fear and so much uncertainty and so much chaos. And the fear
uh,
wasn't just about business; it was about people's lives, and people passing away, and being, having their health threatened. And so that for me was probably one of the most, and I think obviously for many people around the world, one of the most sort of, scary but also life changing situations to have been in. And I think as a leader, I just had no choice but to make this practice something more
yeah.
sort of consistent and regular.
I think we haven't really dealt with all the aftermath of the lockdowns, neither from the business side nor from the personal side. I just had recently a conversation with a clinical psychologist. She says we only have 735 clinical psychologists in South Africa, but we have 20 million traumatized people still. And South Africa might be, even in the African context, privileged. A few years ago, I had contacts with Nigeria, where I was told there is not even a life coach and no clinical psychologist in Nigeria. And this is, I don't know how many people now, 180, 200 million. I think
Almost
even more
200
than
million.
200 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots to do, not only in the health sector that you are doing, but also in the clinical health sector. And yeah, what is done in this time is a tremendous moment of self-reflection and peace, in to name it from the best point of view. Looking
Yeah.
at your position as leader and mother, can you maybe give us a decision you made as CEO that was better because you're a parent? And what did you protect and what was the cost?
So, I think about the experience of, so I had a child when we started Sweep South, my first company, and she was 4 years old. And I think about the experience that she had, which was incredibly difficult, being the child of two parents who were working together to start an incredibly difficult company.
Mm,
Our company, Sweep South, is heavily operational. It is a very people-centered business. You are connecting people together who come from very different contexts. I think that's what's beautiful about the business, but it's also what's hard.
yeah.
And you're doing it in a space that is sacred in people's homes. So you're sort of upping the ante already. And then you're doing it in the
Yes.
context of South Africa and our really difficult history. So the women, a majority are women who go and work in the homes, are women who are at the bottom of South Africa's economic pyramid, who have really suffered from the impacts of apartheid, whether it is livelihood, education, family structure. There are so many things. Um,
Mm,
and so it's complex and difficult. And I think about the experience that, my children had in trying to navigate being children of parents who are trying to do this, and that it is not their dream, it's not their company. And that
yeah.
realization really gave me empathy for our employees um, and their families, their children, our sweep stars children. It made me sort of change the way that we thought about things like maternity leave and family crises, and the way that we have reliability scores for sweep stars who work through the platform, and how we take into account how we factor those scores into their work. Because the reality is that, we're again as women, but people with multiple responsibilities and trying to sort
Mm,
of balance the reality of performance. I'm a person who really values high performance and high output, but at the same time, to have that empathy and that understanding that we have these other roles that are incredibly important as
mm,
parents, as caregivers, as members of community and societies. And my most important role in life is as a mother. It's the
yes.
role I I can't be replaced in. It's the role that is consistently that gives me back. Um, and so just, as a mother, I think what I try and bring to my work is understanding that work is one dimension, but there are other very, very important dimensions to me and to the people who I work with as well. And to
Mm.
try and balance that is, I think, the complex but good question to try and work on.
I hear this very often from very successful women, sometimes single mothers as well, who are highly successful, that still the mother role is the important or one of the most important ones. So I think this also gives the center to our soul, and from where there we can operate. If we step into guilt because we don't have time for our kids or we neglect it, that's probably not where we can create best from. Looking at your whole spectrum from research scientist to founder to impact investor, what was the hardest transition for you, and what resilience practice carried you through this?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things was, as a scientist, as a student research scientist, um, hard work. You needed to work hard, and hard work almost, intelligence, hard work kind of got you through. And
Mm,
then as an entrepreneur, yes, you have to work hard, but you've got to work smart. And then I think later on in your career, as both an entrepreneur and as an investor, it becomes far more about working smart than it is about working hard. Working hard is the
mm,
prerequisite, but
mm,
you've got to work smart. And I say this because sort of in your natural intelligence as a student plus long nights was the name of the game. I would sleep in the lab, I would sleep on the floor under the lab, under the bench in the lab. I
sure.
remember taking my boyfriend, who at the time, who's now my husband, to the lab at I don't know, 10 p.m., 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve before going out, so that I could go and do some lab work before we went out to celebrate the new year. And so, that's the kind of thing. And I don't have the energy to work like that anymore. Um, And it's not about that. And that realization that you need to, you need to be smart and have a strategy as
Yeah.
opposed to the brute force hard work was probably one of the hardest transitions. And I'm so naturally trained to put in hours and just, like push at it. And going back to what we said before, sometimes the part of that smart is just taking a break and going for a walk and letting things settle. And
Uh,
then answers come to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the old Kairos principle. If you just have the peace inside, everything can settle. There was a leader that shared, when there's problems are getting too hard, I play golf. When I come back, the problems reasonably are solved.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not about pushing them off, but to allow them to settle. And when you clear your mind and the peace inside, you maybe have a I don't know. So things are just sometimes some miraculously settled in sometimes.
And
Can you?
sometimes someone else solves them for you. You don't, and that was another realization, is you don't always have to be the hero of the story and, the main character. Sometimes there's another main character who if you just step away, they can take care of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is in private life. I see this very often. Then, if some other person steps with their drama into your life, just
Yes,
step away for a moment. And usually, it settles.
exactly.
um, well, we just talked about your boyfriend and now husband a few times in life. I thought I might have the perfect partner for business and life. Never worked out on my side. You're married to your co-founder. What came first, love or mutual agreement or alignment, the business focus?
So definitely love came first. We met when I was quite young. I was still a student. Um, and and I think what drew me to him are some of the things that make partnership as co-founders work as well. So this was someone who is very different from me personality-wise, very different skill set. He's a software engineer. Um, I've tried to learn coding. I'm terrible at it, so I gave up. Um,
Yeah,
but someone who also is very values aligned, and it's interesting because we come from two completely different places in the world. He's from former Yugoslavia, with parents who are Bosnian and Serbian. We're on opposite sides, so to speak, which
uh,
is such a crazy idea. But we're on opposite sides and left during a civil war.
uh,
And we're married, and had been together themselves as teenagers.
yeah,
And I come from South Africa, where my parents and grandparents and great grandparents, and even further back were activists and
yeah,
human rights activists. But at the same time, we have very similar values: the importance of family. We're both curious people. We are both people who believe in building. I think through our experiences, we've seen the worst of the world, and we believe that there's a best of the world that we can contribute to. And
wow,
so love definitely came first, and we didn't work together for the first 5, 6, 7 years of knowing each other. But
mm,
then when it came time to think about building and sort of putting all of these experiences to use to build something useful and impactful for the world and hopefully
yeah,
scalable, it made sense for us to do it together because we had these complementary skill sets.
wow, yeah, love it. And how does it work in daily life? You said they're very different from each other. Are there often clashes, or is it very clear that one person is doing this, the other person is doing that? What are the weaknesses and strengths, and are you complementing these with each other?
Yes, so absolutely. I think we have very different roles, which I think is important. I completely respect him as an engineer, as someone who is creative, who understands how to build product, who can get really deep in the details. It was actually surprising to me that I have a doctorate which involves getting very deep into something, but he really can be very obsessive about small details. And so I think we're able to sort of, okay, in him being able to do that, I can step into the role where I'm not going to go as deep, and I'm going to kind of take a bird's eye view. So we're
Okay,
also able to kind of shift. And I think that that's one of the reasons we work really well, is that we're able to sort of sense, where are you in this? And then how am I the person who's going to poke a little bit and interrogate, and we respect each other while we do that. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes we have blow ups. We we've worked from home for a long time as well, so we sort of go between working at an office and working at home. And when you spend pretty much 24 hours a day with someone,
Yeah.
things can get, you can hold on to grudges, and if you feel really passionately about something and you're challenged and you don't want to let it go. But what we've become
Mm.
really good at is we shift very quickly to, let's get to being productive and constructive. It's not constructive to fight.
Yeah.
It's neither of us want to be in that space. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
We're parents as well. That also is a really good way to shake you out of being childish and immature about things.
Mm.
It's not a good example. Neither of you will, agree that that's a good example for children. So actually, get along a lot better than
Mm.
people think. And I think the experience of it's not for everyone, absolutely not. But the experience of building something, building a family together and building businesses that are high impact together it's one of the things that I cherish the most in my
Yeah.
life, that I'm the most grateful for, is that we got to do this together.
It brings me back to a little bit to the piece. I think one of the best skills that you can develop is also letting go quickly. It always reminds me on Eckhart Tolle, the image that he created there when two ducks get too close in the pond, they shout at each other, and then they shake it just off, and then it's gone. But we people, then we don't shake it off. We still nag about this 2 weeks later and said, "Can you remember this duck who got into my pond?" So this is
Yeah.
her. And so this is so it's so easy to let go. And in every relationship, private or business, I said, if there's something, bring it to the table. Let us clear the air
Yes.
immediately. This is so
Yeah.
important. And if somebody holds grudges,
Yeah.
maybe not the right one for the team. But
Absolutely.
if you how do you keep teams hopeful when external conditions say slow down, and but the mission can't stop?
I think again, you've got to have a bigger reason for existing. So that the external, whether it's slow down or now is the time to try and fuel the rocket ship or whatever is happening externally. I think the first thing is that there has to be a mission that is important to everyone, that is bigger than what is happening outside temporarily. And
Uh-huh.
this is why every business that I work on or work with, I have to understand, like, what is the impact of this thing? Like,
No,
why should we care about this? Why should the world care about this? So I
no,
think that's the first thing, is going back to why we should exist.
no,
And then again, being recognizing your role as a leader and how people look at you for the answer.
no,
And it's not just your team, it's absolutely your team. But in my case, I have, you have customers, you have investors, and people look to you for not just the solution, but they look to you for, how do we deal with this?
no,
And so that's something that both Alan and I have really tried to do well, is, and again, even with our relationship, is let's be the calm and the rational and the source for people to lean on
no.
when things are tough, or when we need to slow down. Let's be the example for how we need to respond.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a beautiful conversation, interview recently with Max Moyo, one of our speakers as well, sharing some personal details about his family. What's one ordinary moment or person from childhood that still shapes you as a person, as a leader today?
Um, an ordinary person, but who I am so grateful to, is my dad. So my mom is a public figure, and she is an incredible human being, hardworking, high integrity, an incredibly strong woman. She's been through so much throughout
Mm,
her career. And I often think about what she's been through in the context of woman at work. She was working
mm,
in very male dominated environments, where she was not just a woman, but a Black woman in South Africa,
mm,
from, the late 1980s, early 1990s. And I think about, and sometimes she tells us the stories of the things that she had to deal with. So I look up
mm,
to her a lot. But my dad, as a figure, was just is and was the most incredible father, I think, for a daughter to have. My dad is not very tall if you look at pictures of him, but as a little girl, I remember looking up at him and thinking that he was this, so tall, and this, I looked up to him, and I really looked for his approval and adoration. And he was the
Mm,
kind of father who would he would hype you up all of the time. And
mm.
he would sit in front of the mirror and he would, sing songs and say, you're so beautiful and look at this pretty little girl. And I remember he would drop us off at school and he would wind down the window and he'd shout, have a happy day and
Sweet.
you're the best and you're going to do a great job. And it was incredibly embarrassing at the time.
I
Uh,
guess so sometimes.
I mean, all the way exactly through high school, even, and it's like, Dad, please. But he was just so affirming, and to all of us. They have my parents have 4 children. I have 3 siblings, and so affirming to each of us in our own way. He made sure that he had
Mm,
quality time with each of his children, and um, he was a man who he's a masculine man. He was a, a freedom fighter and he trained in MK but he was a man who was just, I don't know how he knew this. He didn't grow up with his own parents. He grew up with his grandparents, but he knew how to be a father. And for friends of mine, I have friends, and my older brother, we have friends who didn't have fathers or whose fathers passed away. And they'll often say to us, your dad was like a dad to me. And so he had this incredible
oh,
capacity somehow to be a great father figure to so many people. He was a teacher. And I still hear from his students, if I ever meet them, that they remember him and how great he was as a teacher. And then I also think about what he was like as a husband to a woman who had a very high powered, very public career. And he was able to strike that balance to be,
mm,
a great husband and a great dad, and also be masculine and make my mom feel very feminine, and
mm.
taken care of. And I think he's the most incredible person and the most wonderful example. And um, unfortunately, yeah, my brothers and my husband they've got a lot to live up to in the example of him as a dad and a husband.
Yeah, beautiful.
But one of the things that he also really did well is that so I've grown up in a very mixed, racially, religious, lots of different countries. There's just so many different influences, and I always felt very weird because I was so different, and I'd be
Mm,
put in every situation I'd be put in. I didn't fit in as a kid, and he
mm,
had these sayings. He would say, "Do you want to be a sheep or do you want to be a lion? Do you want to be a sheep and follow everyone else and look like everyone else, or do you want to be a lion?" And he would have these little sayings that at the time, again, like with how he was at the school drop off, they were so annoying because he would say it over and over again. And it was his answer to so many things. And it was just
mm,
like, Dad, but you don't get it. And, this is how we feel and you don't understand. And now that I'm older, so many things that he said
mm,
really make sense. They resonate, and he was ahead of his time in many ways. Again,
mm,
being a husband he has his own career, but he's sort of taken a step back. Being
mm,
someone who celebrates difference and diversity, being someone who's not afraid to be loving and caring as a man. Those are
mm.
things that they're quite modern.
Yeah.
And I don't know where he got those things from.
It's quite interesting. I hear this very often from successful people, especially in South Africa, for some reason, that their parents were teachers. I recently had a lovely conversation with one of our speakers, Dr. Mtejo Nyati, who is our executive chairperson of ESCOM. Thanks that we have electricity today. That mentioned his parents are teachers. And I
Mm.
often see that teachers either can have a very negative impact, that you are going strictly to the book, or like
Yeah,
your father challenged you, do you want to become a sheep or a, what did you say, wolf? No, sheep or a,
a
um,
sheep or a lion. Yeah.
a sheep or a lion, exactly. So it's the challenging to be different. I think this is
Yes.
what is so important in our thinking, that as we've been trained, do not follow just the book, but
Yes.
get out of there. It's such a beautiful story about your father, and I have high respect for your mother as well. Maybe we should have a co-interview with her one day. You said your ancestors and role models live with you as a kind of silent board. Who sits on that board, and how do they influence your decisions today?
Mm. I think the two people that I can think of. So my grandmother, my mother's mother, we spent a lot of time with them when I was young, and she had this soft, very gentle voice. So she had 7 children, and her husband, of course, was my grandfather, who was an anti-apartheid activist, was jailed numerous times, exiled, um, and she was a real mother, real motherly figure. And she was very gentle, soft voice and very gentle, but also very strict about values and about the way that you behave. And I remember, so we would visit them and she would ask us to clean up after lunch or breakfast or help her with cleaning the house. And if I didn't, she would, quite soft but quite stern, she would
Mm,
say, "Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy." But she'd say it in "Don't be lazy, Aisha," in this way. And I often hear her talking to me in that voice and encouraging me or bringing me back to values with
mm,
decisions that I have to make. And so that voice and just the particular voice that she had, um, that often comes back to me. And then I was also fortunate, which I don't think a lot of people have this experience, but my great grandfather, Z.K. Matthews, um, was also exiled eventually. He was an anti apartheid activist. He was a lecturer. So he was a lawyer, but he was a lecturer to Nelson Mandela and many other struggle stalwarts, and was a mentor to them. And he was at Fort Hare University and lectured there, and eventually brought many young students into conscience around South Africa and the plight of Black South Africans. And
mhm,
I was fortunate to hear a recording where I actually heard his voice. He died in the 1950s, I think yeah, I can't remember what year, but well before I was born. And um, there's this recording of him speaking about the equality of all races and speaking about the dignity of all humans. And I I just think it's incredible to have that experience of hearing the voice of your ancestor who you've never met speak like that.
mm.
And so that sort of responsibility to carry on that work or that way of thinking, I feel quite heavily in my
Yeah,
own career. And maybe a different struggle. I sort of think it's maybe about economic upliftment of people and physical upliftment and helping people to live healthier lives. But when I hear those two voices of the two different ancestors, it's kind of like you have to do meaningful things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There are so many unsung heroes. Your grandfather, you said your grand grandfather is probably one of them. It always There's something deeply connecting me to African voices like Steve Biko or Robert Sobukwe.
Mm.
So much wisdom there that almost is forgotten. No one talks about these people any longer. There are just a
Yeah.
few heroes that are still be in our minds, but so many are not. Um, if your children would ask you, what's the one value I was never compromise, what would you
Mm.
answer?
I would say honesty and integrity, but to yourself. I think it's very easy to fool yourself and believe that you are either doing or being a version of yourself that is not
Mm,
is not true to who you really are. And I think
mm,
with children, it's a great way to it's pretty easy to do it with kids because they do it a lot, right? It's part of growing up is this person did this to me and what did you do? Oh, I did nothing. But did you really? Like, is that really honest? Are you being honest with yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
Or I
yeah.
didn't get a good mark. Okay. And did you study? Yes, I did. Okay, how many
Mm.
hours? When did you start studying? How did you? So to not fool yourself. I think people talk about honesty and transparency and all of these things, but actually the first thing is don't lie to yourself. Um,
I just wanted to
that's
say this. You can exactly wanted to say this. You can lie to others, but you can never lie to yourself. It's
yeah,
actually not true
yeah.
because your consciousness lows and it will get stored, and you just
It will come out.
I don't
Exactly.
know,
It won't,
ridiculous.
that lack of alignment will come out somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You mentioned earlier your mother had it also quite difficult in her life, being a mother, being a woman, probably
Yeah.
also from upbringing as well. Do you think still today in our world there are unnecessary additional challenges for Africans and for women in our world? What would you like others to understand more about these challenges, and how do we bridge a better understanding?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that, you made a comment about electricity. And thank goodness we have electricity. And I think so some of these things are just infrastructural issues that
Mm,
Africans have to deal with. I spent some time doing business in Nigeria. Same thing, almost every day the electricity would turn off at some point at the time that I was there. And it was just a given that this would
mm,
happen. So and I now I'm sitting in Silicon Valley right now, and I can't remember a time where had an unplanned outage, and if it has ever happened, it's been resolved very quickly with really good communication. Um,
mm,
and so we have these infrastructural challenges on the continent that make it really difficult for us to do good work. And so I think that that is one challenge. The second challenge is that I think that we have a leadership issue on the continent. I
mm,
think we have an issue with leadership that is there to serve the people with integrity. Leaders are public servants. They are not people who are there to enrich themselves, to own power, to sit in power so that they can, feel great about themselves and accumulate wealth. And I think that we have a sickness at the moment on the African continent, and I see thankfully some good examples of this being overturned. But we have a leadership issue. And then for women, I think that the challenge as an African woman is, of course, all of these things that we face as Africans. But on top of that, I sometimes feel that we've been sold a very dangerous and unfair story that you
mm.
can compete with, and compete is part of the lie, because we're not competing, but that you should compete is some of the lie with
Yeah,
men in business and at work, while still needing to keep all of the responsibilities that women and that mothers had prior to it being commonplace
yeah,
to work, to build businesses and all of that. And so I think that the challenge is that we're doing this without the additional support and support networks that help to facilitate that, and without
mm,
compensating with some additional sharing of responsibility. And then, yeah, I don't think that we should be competing. I think that we should be complementing. Um,
mm,
and so I think, yeah, we sort of, as African women, are faced with multiple challenges. And sometimes I feel like it's that analogy of, you start a race, and when the gun goes off to start the race, your legs are tied and you still have to reach down and untie your legs, and then you can start running, and at that time everyone is already miles ahead,
yeah.
and you're
I
expected
just
to
said,
catch up and and judge the same at the end of the race.
mm, I recently had a conversation with a successful African female entrepreneur. She applied for a project overseas in Europe, and the project was denied to her. Then she just tried something. She registered her company in London, and the project was approved. same person, same application, just different locations. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
something that we still need to be aware of, that some people struggle more than others.
absolutely.
Science with a heartbeat. When you talk about science with a heartbeat, what do you mean? And can you share one story when the heartbeat changed the science or the product?
Yeah, so one thing that sticks out for me as you say that is these videos. I don't know if you've seen them of children who get hearing devices or an implant, a cochlear implant, and will and people have these videos of that moment where they're able to hear the voice of their parents. And when I say science with a heartbeat, that's what I mean is that, research is incredible and the intellectual pursuit is incredible. But what really connects people to it is when you see the emotional impact on people. And so, in the case of Pandora, as an example, we were building an AI powered platform that helps people manage chronic health conditions. But the
Mm,
heartbeat is the experience of hearing the feedback from someone when they've had their first engagement with the platform or their first call with a health coach and felt like I can do this. I I understand what to do. I've got a plan and I feel empowered for the first time, maybe in years, to actually take control of my health and to do something that's going to make me feel better. And so the emotional impact is the heartbeat is, you can't take that away from what it is that you're doing and the impact of what it is that you're doing. And I've always felt that I admire people who are able to think in the very abstract,
mm.
and at very sort of constantly at very high intellectual level. But I've always been like that, where I need to take it back to people and feelings and responses and what is what's the actual outcome, and how does that, if you look at someone, what does that do to them?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think if we are really emotional and open, we are so able to receive these emotions, which are sometimes more rewarding than anything else. I somehow are wired like this. Before a person starts to cry, I already cry when feeling their emotions, and this even happens when there's an excellent actor in movies, so that I sit there and feel the emotion before it's there. So it's phenomenal. Um, I think this is a beautiful crossover to talk about more about the subjects and passions that you are speaking about and involved in your business. Care that fits real lives, the real problem now in women's health innovation. If we strip away the buzzwords, what's actually breaking women's chronic care today?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing is that women's health has been ignored largely for centuries. So, in research, the vast majority of healthcare research is done on men. And it is because there's the notion that women are complicated because we have different life stages. We have an additional X chromosome. We have menstrual cycles, and all of these things interfere with research and clean research results and protocols.
Mm,
And so we've got a long way to go to catch up, firstly. And there's so many examples from, there's a great book about how, the seatbelt, as an example, about how the world has been designed for men, and the example of how, the seatbelt doesn't take into account the fact that women have breasts and get pregnant and all of these things. And so one issue is just that we've been left behind and not considered and sort of left completely out of the equation and been viewed as small representations of men. So a woman
mm,
is maybe two-thirds or a half the size of a man, and we'll just extrapolate and not take into account all of these different things about women's physiology and biology. And then
sure.
the second thing is that, and I think linked to this, is that for a long time, decisions about women's lives and women's bodies have been made by men. In most countries, It has been decades, not centuries, since women have been able to vote and have been viewed as whole humans in the same way legally as men have been. And so the knock on effect of that is when legislation is made about women's bodies and women's health and women's rights, the people sitting at the table are men who don't have the experience of being a woman.
Mm.
And so this, I think these factors, in addition to many more, are what has resulted in women's chronic care being completely um, underserved, under researched, undermined, and we see it today with conversations about women's reproductive rights and women's sexual health. And these are complex conversations, and they are complex things. They are not. I don't think that they are easy conversations to have. But the issue is that women are not sitting at the table and having their views being respected as part of their diverse views being respected as part of these conversations.
I actually wasn't aware of this. This is a complete new awareness. Wow, it blows my mind. I often talk about things that, for example, many conferences and other subjects are planned still from the continent, especially from London, where the very many great conference organizers sit and organize this conference for Africa. And there
Yeah.
was once, Grasha Mahel said once, nothing about us without us. But this is
Yes.
still not far enough, I think. It is not even without us. It's that Africa has to lead it.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think this is so powerful that you as a woman brings the awareness to the table that science has ignored women completely. I was completely not aware of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say to, so I started the business. Um, One of the reasons was that I have dealt with a chronic reproductive condition for a long time, which I've tried to be very public about, called
Yeah.
endometriosis, which is not well understood and it's a chronic condition. It's not well understood what causes it. There's no real treatment for it. The intervention is usually surgery. It results in chronic pain that worsens over time, infertility. And I can't fathom how someone who hasn't experienced it personally could understand the experience of someone who has a condition like this. And
Yeah.
so, I think that, and I don't think that it should only be women at the
Mm.
table. And I don't think that it should only be people who personally deal with these conditions, but you need to have representation, a voice, agency, because again, going back to the experience being what's important.
Yeah.
I think that that voice of someone who's personally experienced it is important.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we're talking about voices, one of the new voices is very much the AI with consciousness. One place where AI helps right now, and one place it must not replace human judgment at all, if ever.
So I think, AI is incredibly helpful from an optimization perspective. And I think that similar to any other technology, any other big technology, it is going to happen. There's no point debating, um, if that aspect of it is good or bad and should we stop it, or we cannot stop it. It's here. And I think what it does incredibly well is it allows us to really optimize our work and hugely increase our input. It is an intern, a PA, an EA, a financial manager, a analyst. It's so many things, and I
Yeah,
think that's all great. And from that perspective, the more people who understand how to use it, the better, because not understanding how to use it, you will be left behind. And it's the same as the conversation that I was having about technology in Africa 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and why I think it's so important for Africans across the economic spectrum to be digitally literate. So
mm,
that's not going to change. AI is here and people will use it, and we will use it to replace some of the things that human beings have done.
yeah,
What we should use it for then is to capacitate people to use it so that they can bring out the best of themselves. And that's where AI should not replace what humans can do, is
Mm.
creativity, lived experience, and using your lived experience to imagine and then to build based on that imagination. And then also to be our guide. And I think humanity ultimately, we're building AI in many ways in our we're building it in our image, right? Like you
Mm.
want smarter XYZ job or a smarter, whatever version. I think about how we build robots and they always look
Yeah.
like human beings. We're building these things in our image. And so how do we try and make sure that it still reflects the best of us and still be that beacon for what humanity is and means and what humans' values are? And, what are the things that have um, driven from a positive perspective human
Mm.
progress um, over, the last few centuries? So that it should not replace. And the ability to think critically. That is another thing that I'm incredibly worried about is
Okay.
um is that we become lazy to think and to question and to interrogate because of this blend of, I think, on the one hand, social media, where things are delivered to you as fact, and you take a sound bite and that becomes the whole story. And then the other thing is that, if everything is delivered to you on a plate, it doesn't encourage you to think critically and to question even the AI, which can be mistaken or one-sided or biased or wrong. To question that as well. So we must never lose our ability to critically interrogate.
I completely agree with this. I use a lot of AI. I call her or him or whatever my PAI. So
Yeah,
no PA, but PAI. And the literacy is definitely something that we have to look at. And I feel the critical thinking is what we really need to train, critical thinking literacy, so to say, because
yeah,
otherwise we are quickly misguided. And I actually programmed my AI to say, "You challenge me. We are in this together. So, what do we want to achieve?" These are my questions to my AI. Yesterday, I don't know, probably you didn't see, there was an article that talked about this yesterday with Rapalang Rabana, powerful speaker with us as well. She is so powerful in creating a better world in literacy. But there was an article just 2 days ago that 81% of the people in fourth grade cannot read
mm,
or write properly one language in South Africa.
yeah. Wow.
So, and
Yeah,
we are now talking about AI literacy. So
yeah,
there's lots to do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. A huge risk and huge crisis potential. And these are young people who are the next, they're the next generation. They are the we are the custodians of the world for them, and so
Yes.
that is incredibly scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Again,
Absolutely.
that I think there are enough people who can think about solutions to this that
Mm.
utilize technology. It's not the answer to everything,
Yeah.
but I think that we should be hopeful about addressing problems like this.
Mm. Hmm. Another topic that you also like to engage with is builder's mindset and entrepreneurial resilience. Tell me a little bit about what this entails for you.
Yeah, so I mean, around the builders and entrepreneurial mindset, I've talked about mission, which I think is the important overarching thing to go back to. But then, what's particularly important, especially in the early days, is momentum. And I find that ongoing momentum and the feeling of progress is incredibly motivating for entrepreneurs. And a lack of momentum, a sustained lack of momentum, in the face of effort and activity, can be the death knell. I think it's what
Mm.
leads to burnout. I don't think burnout is about just working hard. I think it's about working hard and consistently not seeing results, or not seeing the desired results. So I think momentum is incredibly important. And to do that, the way that I've structured my way of working is that I have a list of things to do, and I make sure that I have things to do regularly that are going to help push progress. Again, that's aligned with the mission. What are you trying to achieve? And then what are you going to do to achieve that? I work with a to-do list. I have to. my mind just needs something to anchor back to. It's a physical list, so I need to write it down. I love the experience of writing that list down at night or at the beginning of the day and then crossing things off. I have a dopamine hit from when I cross something off and I've done it. And then I prioritize. So every day on that list, I have a number one and a star next to the thing that is the most important in achieving the mission or trying to get done what I'm trying to do. And
Mm.
then an important element is also rest. So there are days where I don't feel like working, I don't feel motivated, I'm tired. And on those days, I try and make them productive by one, proper rest, mental rest, but then also taking some time to just think and reflect
Yeah.
on how did things go, where things didn't go well, what could I have done better, what should I do, what would I do if I could do it again, what should I do going forward to try and, fix whatever it was if something broke. Um,
Mm.
and and yeah, I think and not beat myself up. I used to beat myself up about that piece in particular, but not beat myself up. And the way to not beat myself up is to not have a fixed term mindset. Um, so it's great to have the to-do list and the goals and all of those things, but also just give myself a bit of space for, okay, today was not the day when we could achieve that. You did properly give it good effort. Again, going back to being honest with yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You gave it a good effort. Or yeah, you didn't actually try that hard. And
Yeah.
then tomorrow is another day, or the next hour is another hour, or next week is another week. And you can try and do that better. So just trying to be a bit, real and sort of reflective about what I was able to achieve and not achieve. But I think constantly, like, checking in with yourself is really important for that builder's mindset. And I find lots of entrepreneurs, you're doing things that are hard anyway. And I think we can kid ourselves into thinking that we are doing work, whereas it's just busy work, or we're just doing the stuff that is easy and that's on your to-do list because it's not the thing that presses a button. It's hard, or it touches something where maybe you'll fail and you'll feel embarrassed or
Yeah.
rejected, or it's something that you're not good at, or whatever the case is. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, you got to try and keep yourself honest about the reality of what you're doing, and then how does that tie back to what you need to be doing.
Mm. I just had a beautiful interview with Dr. Colinda Linde. She just came out with the word self-care-ish. So not
Yeah,
selfish, not care, but self-care-ish, that you really need to take care of yourself as well. Because if you fail, your business can fail. And I think this is the piece that you mentioned. It's the clarity. And
yeah,
if you build businesses and you're going to build businesses that are very much about scaling. So what
yeah.
practice helps you sustain clarity and energy when scaling new ventures?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that saying of the self-care-ish. And I think often
Yeah.
people, particularly women, we feel selfish about just the notion of self-care for some reason. Everyone
Mm.
deserves it just because, and I don't deserve it just because. So sometimes, while we work on that, saying, well, I deserve it because I want to be a good leader for other people
Mm.
and a good mom and a good whatever is a good way to to make sure that you put that front and center.
Mm.
And then I think in terms of sustaining clarity and energy, so there are practical practices that I do. So meditation is something that I started practicing during the pandemic so that I didn't completely fall apart with everything that was happening. I try to practice yoga as much as I can. It's also a way to just be in your body, and not, and you can't be somewhere else. You have to be
Mm.
present. You have to be in your body, and those movements can also be very cleansing. I
Mm.
try and get out into nature when I can, even if it's just sitting outside for a few minutes and feeling the sun. And so those things, practices that help encourage presence, I find are really good for getting clarity and energy back.
Mm.
And then using a support network, which I think, I'm glad people are speaking about that more. But sometimes just talking to people who are not directly involved, um, and talking out things can be super helpful as a form of stress relief, as a way to get clarity. Um, and sometimes my husband will talk to me about a work problem and he'll say, I'm just talking to you. Like, I don't necessarily want you to solve it, but I'm just talking to you and I'm figuring it out in my mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he'll talk in some way through. He'll go, okay, I've got it. I'm done. I've
yeah,
got the
yeah,
answer.
yeah.
So
Beautiful.
also using other people, to help you sort of unravel things in your mind is a good practice as well.
Wonderful. Maybe this brings us directly to the other topic that you're also passionate about, the operating system, lab to life or L2L. Walk us the L2L 5 moves on a real thing. On one product or program, show us signal, fit, proof, safety, scale. Where did it nearly fail? What evidence changed your mind?
Yeah, so I mean, I've built two businesses now, invested in eight personally as an angel, invested in over 20 through E4E Africa, our fund. And so I've seen that experience many, many times, from nothing idea to something that is scaling and growing. And
Hmm.
so the formula for me usually is that there's a problem, there's a need, and I see a problem, an opportunity, a gap that is not being fulfilled. And then there is, okay, what would a solution potentially look like? And can I test that this problem really exists and that this solution might be something that people may want in the market as quickly as possible?
Hmm.
Starting with solution does not work, because you get married to what the solution looks like before properly understanding the problem. So
Yeah.
you've got to start with there's a problem or an opportunity. And
Hmm.
then asking within your network, within the target market, the broader market, do you have this problem? Do you think it's a problem? I'm thinking of building this. Better yet, if you have a very basic version of it, do you think this would solve the problem? And is this something that would be valuable to you? Would you pay for it, or whatever, however you're envisioning that it's going to
Hmm.
work? And then from there, it's pretty much trying to make sure that the market knows that it exists and
Hmm.
understands what it is. So that's where marketing and branding come in, and I think knows why it exists. So what is this thing about? So
Hmm.
not just what does it do, but what is it about? What is in it for me? How does this relate to me? How does this connect with me? And
Yeah.
then iterating on it as you get feedback from users, and using that to build. And as you're building, to start eking out, and work into different markets. So you often start with early adopters and the people who are either close to you, or they have a burning issue. And then once you've saturated that, you need to go, into a broader market, and that's essentially how you scale. And where
Hmm.
this can go wrong is if you get the order wrong. So if, again, you want to scale and start thinking about scaling before you think about solving a problem, or
Yeah.
you haven't spoken to the market and gotten in there. And again, a lot of this speaks to, so entrepreneurs, and being an entrepreneur is the best way to touch all of the sacred lies about yourself that you want to keep. Right? It's like, because I don't want to talk to customers because people will reject me, or they'll tell me my idea sucks,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
people won't want to talk to me, or they'll think I look funny, and run away from me, or whatever the case is, or maybe I'm not so smart. So
Oops.
we, sometimes shy away from the different steps because they touch something that is sacred to you. And you have to make
Hmm.
sure not to do that. So you've got to do the steps in order, and you've got to do all of them properly without trying to protect some part of your ego. And then things go wrong, and that iterating continues forever. In the case of Sweep South, all of the things I thought would be difficult were difficult. And then the things we didn't think would be difficult, like scaling, and the experience of having too many customers. I never envisioned that would be a problem. But we at one point had way too many customers, didn't anticipate during a festive season that we would have so much demand, and this is people who are on holiday and they are entertaining guests, and suddenly they can't get a booking, or they get a booking and someone doesn't show up. And so often the challenge is not something that you anticipated; it's something completely left field, and you've just got to deal with it. Or in the case of
Um,
Pandora, it took us a while. We knew that the problem was that women and people in general who have chronic health conditions don't get the care that they need. But it took us a while to figure out what the solution was and what the platform should look like. And so that initial phase, that sort of like level one, the fit piece, it took quite a while, and it was tough, especially as someone who's built before and who's advising other startups. You think that it'll just fall into your lap, and it took a while, and we had to just be patient and listen to feedback and keep building, and just trust that it would come.
it's I think already difficult with own projects, but even maybe more difficult with other projects you're involved. I read this once that it's about the kill and commit gates. I call this rather win or commit gates because I don't like words like kill or so. Proceed, pause, or refine. Others call it fail quickly. And I just was listening yesterday to someone who said the first three adventures failed quickly. And this is sometimes um, it's good when if we fail quickly, and when you say the momentum, what you said earlier, the momentum is not there, and when you don't see results, when the evidence is mixed, when researchers say maybe, when team says ship and the patient says help, what's the rule? How do you decide whether to proceed, pause, or refine?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a really tough one in practice. It's very
Um,
easy to preach uh,
yes.
the sort of theoretical rules for
Mm,
what to do. I think in reality, in practice, I look at two things. So the one is, who is the person who understands the most about this thing, this project, this decision, this customer, and what do they think? So it doesn't end there, but I think that there are definitely, whether it's a project lead or the person who has brought something up, or again, the customer who's the person that experiences the issue. But there's a person or people who understand this better than everyone else in the room, and focusing on that person or people can help to cut out some of the noise. And then the second thing is that I think there is a place for data and there's a place for intuition. And again, if you're asking yourself this question, things are not going well, and something needs to change.
yeah, yeah,
Otherwise, if things are going well, continue is the answer. If you're asking yourself this question, things are not going well. There's a challenge. Something needs to change, and then I think you need to look at a blend of data and apply intuition to it. And intuition is something that I think good leaders do. I'm not sure people speak about enough.
yeah,
And you gain intuition through being connected to yourself and your gut feel, and that combination of gut feel plus experience. And so I think that, looking at data, but then applying intuition to it. And if I think about myself as a leader, um, not always, but in many cases, my intuition in situations like this has felt like, that's not quite right. Or there's something here that doesn't feel aligned. It feels slightly off. Um,
yeah.
or there's something with this project or person that just doesn't feel quite right. So there isn't an easy answer, but I would say, when do you decide whether to proceed, pause? I think you always pause at that point, and then you ask around the room, but it's not a time for democracy where every voice is equal.
Yeah.
And then you look at data, and you go guided by intuition, and then
Mm,
you've got to have someone who ultimately makes the call. We talk about disagree and commit with our teams, where there's situations like this that are not about everyone having an equal say and an equal vote, and maybe we're wrong again with whatever we decide. coming out of situations like this, but we all have to commit that we need to make a decision. It's likely going to be incomplete and imperfect. We go forward, and as long as we know that we have the ability to iterate, we can
Mm,
do that. Um, Jeff Bezos also talks about the two different types of choices or decisions that you can make, and with most being reversible and a very small amount being irreversible. And I think that you can think when you're in a situation like this that everything is irreversible. And so you need to spend a huge amount of time trying to get to the exact perfect answer. When in reality, most decisions and actions are reversible. And so it's actually just let's use the best tools that we have to go forward, and then let's question again. And if we need to iterate, we can do it again.
yeah, I think intuition is something. I was recently talking to someone after I was participating in a workshop about decision making. The person talking about how decision making is built in understanding and books, etc. And this is one of our top leaders. And I just said, I'm coming usually from my intuition. And he said, yeah, me too. So intuition is definitely one of the things that we definitely should more look at. And I think it was one of the great
Yep.
gurus. Not everyone likes him any longer, but he says we come from instinct, and many step into
Mm.
intellect, and they think they have arrived. But this is just the bridge
Yep.
to intuition. So
Yes.
behind the intellect, there is the intuition. So it's not just the academic understanding of it or the scientific understanding. It's still also, I believe, the trust in yourself, intuition. What really do you think? And you just said we can't. I don't know if you said this, but you talked about perfect. For me, it is not about perfect. For me, it's about optimal. We never really can
Yes.
achieve perfect, but we can achieve the optimal for each and every situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I think intuition can also be used as a guide for um a sort of dual feedback. So
Mm,
if I one, the intuition is a secret source and no one else is ever gonna have Aisha's intuition or Jay's intuition. So
yes.
that's already a great, defensible, unique characteristic that you can bring to situations.
Mm,
But also it's a good way to ask yourself, um, if the situations that you're in where you're a leader are aligned with you. So if
mm,
my intuition is constantly off, there's something wrong there. If I constantly have good intuition and it results in good decisions and good progress, then there's probably good alignment between what I'm doing and the things I'm making a decision about and me being in that decision making role. I don't know if that makes sense, but if your intuition
absolutely.
is constantly off, it's a good indicator that there's something that's not quite right there.
Yeah, yeah. Which brings us probably is a perfect bridge again to the other topic that you like to talk about: peace-led leadership platforms with dignity. Leading through chaos.
Mm.
Describe the leader who walks into a chaos and settles the room. What do they do first?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to assess and be aware of what's happening in the room. What is the mood? Um, and I think leaders need to be responsive to the mood. I think that, coming in with a preconceived notion, which I sometimes do, I sometimes have to tell myself to pause, not just jump into an agenda, but pause and sort of get a sense of where everyone is at and then
Mm,
be responsive to that. So the first thing that that leader does is be aware of who is in the room and what is happening and what is the mood and where are we at, and then respond and not just to charge full steam ahead with whatever plan you had.
okay. Keeping calm under pressure, I think, is also very important for every leader. What's your three-part protocol for staying steady under pressure?
So the first thing is taking a breath. It is so just pausing and exactly just taking that deep breath and grounding, being present, um, eyes open. What is happening? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is speaking to people in the room. So what, like, again, you don't have to be, and this is another transition, is as a leader, you don't have to be the person who speaks the most. You don't have to be the person who um, is telling everyone what to do and is directing. So, what is the input that you're getting or the signal that you're getting from everyone else in the room? And then I think your job, so that's the second. So, one is to just calm, relax. Then the second is what is the signal that I'm getting? What is the input that I'm getting? And then I
Mm,
think your job is to try and in a calm, rational, peaceful way make sense of that and try and give back something that is that is actionable and rational and sensible.
mm.
And then and then to continue that loop. So I would say that is my 3 point is the first is just take the deep breath and be calm, and then let's start to engage from a place of being relaxed and rational.
Yeah, beautiful. One of the people that I like to listen to said once, you have two ears, one mouth, use them proportionately. So
Yes.
it's not about you always talking, it's about more listening and then coming back with how can I say, with a decision that is really based on what you hear. Can you share
Absolutely.
one mechanism that protected dignity, safety, pay, or voice while you were driving growth?
Yes, and so I think, I mean, one mechanism, but maybe it ties back actually to what you're saying is this communication thing and
Yeah.
and and the importance of communication and it being as much about listening as it is about talking. Um, in both of my companies, we work with people who are used to not being heard.
Mm,
So women who have chronic conditions and are in a doctor's office or are speaking to a specialist and feel as if they've been dismissed and not taken seriously. And in Sweep South case, domestic workers whose voices are not heard in conversations about dignified work, about pay and what people should be paid, about minimum wage, about households and caring for children and making sure that people have a safety net. And so listening is one of the most powerful things that you can do in that situation. And then when you do speaking for understanding, not just to say what you want to say and then your job is done. And I think leaders often forget this is that when we talk to people, it's also our responsibility to ensure that the message is understood.
mm,
And so you can't just get away with saying, well, I said it and that's it. It's your job
mm.
to try and make sense of what I'm saying or to try and get what I'm trying to convey. You have a responsibility to make sure that your message gets understood as well. So,
From
I think dignity, a lot, you can bring dignity to a situation just by helping someone understand that you are listening and that they've been heard,
yeah,
and then working from that point.
from this message that you maybe want to bring out, what are the three dignity metrics, KPIs that should travel the world in all regions?
Well, I think the first is that the listening piece again. So, communication and good communication, which is prefaced on listening and understanding and clarity.
Mm,
And then I think another one is respect.
mhm,
And we had a lot of this conversation with Sweep South is the idea of, you know, what is dignified work? Is there such a thing as undignified work? And the conclusion that we came to is that there isn't actually such a thing as undignified work, but it's work should be respected and people should be respected regardless of the work that they do. And they should be treated well, paid adequately, and treated with dignity. And
mm,
so respect is something that I think is really important. We with Sweep South talk to the team a lot about engaging and communicating in a way that conveys respect. And then the third thing, I think, which is not a KPI, but maybe just a rule to sort of keep in mind, but I think the golden rule I find really powerful, just as a very simple way, very easy way to interrogate your actions and thoughts. So do to others what you would like to be done to yourself. And
yeah,
it's very easy. If you're going to say something, how would I feel if someone else said this to me? If you treat someone in a particular way? How would I feel being treated like that? And it's a very, very quick way to check yourself from a dignity and respect perspective.
Yeah, beautiful. Unfortunately, many people are still dealing with their own trauma, so it's not always
Yeah.
easy for everyone. But from dignity and respect, let's dive into another topic that you're very passionate about: women in tech and inclusive leadership. Many women in tech feel pressured to lead like men. What unique strengths do you refuse to give up, and how has this shaped your leadership?
So I think so. I've always really operated well in zones where I'm just able to be authentic. I definitely tried in the early days of being a tech entrepreneur to embody what I thought of as like a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur.
Mm,
And it never works because you can't quite pull it off exactly the same. And so I think being authentic is something that I really I value. And in that authenticity, I I'm someone who talks about feelings. I think feelings are important. I think that the soft stuff is important. Um, I have a sense of humor. I'm not able to be um, stern and like the old model of a leader, a respectful CEO is that it's very tight and buttoned up and you're very stern and people are scared of you. I'm 5'1". People are not scared of me. So I'm
mm,
like, I can't pretend to be those things. So I think just bringing that authenticity to conversations, and then but at the same time, knowing that the hard stuff that people value, I know that I'm intelligent, I work hard, I have a unique perspective. There are things that I'm very, very sure about in the businesses. And
yeah.
so I think that's where some of the hardness maybe can come in, is there things that I know that I bring to the table without a doubt. But
Mm,
the way that I do that is in a way that is maybe more feminine and informal than, I guess, traditional old school leadership. And it's not necessarily a thing about men and women. I'm really encouraged to see more men show up in ways that are soft and authentic. And it's not, soft or humorous or um if you're scared about something, then say that you're scared about it, just, in ways that are authentic. But I do, it's not just women who are doing it, but I do think that women often are able to promote that
mm.
more than sort of the traditional old school environment was able to do.
Yeah, I love what you say about authenticity, and this is what I often encourage people. No one wants to have a different, no one wants to have a second, I don't know, Nelson Mandela or someone. Don't be like someone else. Be yourself.
Yeah.
This is what you're born for, and this is your unique purpose, and this is where your unique drive and journey also comes from. But you just said
So
about
true.
male,
Yep.
yeah, about male and female. What can male colleagues maybe, especially in boardrooms, learn from the balance you strike as a founder and as a mother?
So I just want to make a comment on being yourself,
Yeah.
because I think it's important, is that when we're children, we are ourselves and we don't know how to be anything else. And then you go through the world and you have everyone telling you that you need to be someone else, and this is the person who is great and this is the person who's not great. And you need to go through that because there's some refinement, and like children don't always understand how to share. You've got to learn those. So they're positive qualities that you have to learn through those examples. But
Mm,
then some of the journey of life and the journey of leadership is that then you have to go back to yourself and what is the sort of version 2 of your best self.
mm,
And it's probably one of the most difficult. I think that's our life's journey. It's one of the most difficult things to do, is what is that uniquely me,
wow,
um,
wonderful.
while stripping away all of the other false examples that I'm trying to live up to because
Yeah,
someone told me that I need to be like that. So it's incredibly hard, but that is what life is.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I
And
think that
so,
you feel the sweet spot when it's really about you. And I shared this example maybe with you, how I rebooted or restarted African Speaker Bureau. I just one morning was quite angry that I needed to still pay my or still decided to pay my domain fee, and suddenly it just made seriously. And since then I'm thriving. I feel like 21. I feel like this is what I have to do, and I never really understand why I stopped it. I know why I stopped it, but it's when you feel this is your destiny, this is your passion, this is your purpose. And I could not really understand why now. I was happily retired, but this is so, and this is one of the myths. I think retirement is completely overrated. You are too young to think about retirement, but retirement is boring. I think everybody needs to understand it. Don't look forward to retirement. Live now. Get your life
absolutely,
now in order, and live from the passion and purpose as long as you have it. Um,
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you still want to say something about the male colleagues in the boardroom?
So I think one of the things that women do well is collaboration instead of competition,
Yeah.
and um, thinking about complementarity instead of one-upmanship, um, or comparison. And I think that that's something that everyone can learn from, is the idea of we all have our strengths, and how do we combine these strengths in a way that makes the sum of the parts contribute to a whole that is that
Uh,
you know, large and exciting and more powerful than what we can do individually. So I think that that's something that that men could take away from is, you know, I'm not threatened by someone who has a different skill set or a different experience, or who's maybe achieved what I'm hoping to achieve. Um, it's more, what do I add to the table, and how can we make this really incredible by working together?
wow, nice. Yeah. So if you could redesign corporate culture to truly include women's leadership, what would you start with?
I think the very first thing that I would do is making it not absolutely impossible for women to balance trying to have a family with contributing to a mission at work,
Hmm.
and meaningfully contributing.
Hmm.
And so again, I think the structure, it's become so expensive, and so difficult to care for a family and work at the same time.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I'd look at, is just, you know, how do we support women
Hmm.
to thrive in both roles?
Hmm.
And then the second piece would be valuing those the skills that and the experiences that women bring to the table. And
Hmm.
also, you know, it's not, and I'm very cautious about, you know, saying this clearly, is it's not that women are not performance driven and super intelligent and super sharp and, you know, driving themselves and hard work and all of these great things that you just need to be a leader. You know, and that's the reality of it. It's not that women are not all of those things, but sometimes we feel like the additional things that women are a detraction or a negative.
Hmm.
Whereas I think those things are a positive on top of those qualities.
Beautiful. Platforms with dignity, growth without exploitation. One mechanism, safety, pay or voice, that improved both trust and growth. Exactly what did you install?
So one mechanism that helps to do all of these things, I think, was actually walking in the shoes of both.
Mm-hmm.
So walking in the shoes of, and again in Sweep South's case, walking in the shoes of women who do the work. We
Mm-hmm.
went and cleaned homes ourselves. Would sit on long drives with women who were working through the platform to understand everything about their lives, from, you know, what does it feel like when you wake up in the morning and you need to go to a booking, to what are your daily experiences and your complaints about life or the things
Mm-hmm.
that are challenging, and then doing the same with customers as well. So I think one of the big things is walking in the shoes of the people who you serve and understanding the context from their perspective.
Mm, beautiful. You are available for keynotes. You're also available for workshops. What do people do in your 90 or 60 to 90 or half day sessions? What changed by Friday?
So action. I always emphasize that there needs to be an action that comes out of whether it is a talk or a workshop. So a workshop allows you to be more practical
Mm-hmm.
and go through some of the practical steps, firstly, that I have gone through. I don't like to talk about things that I have not done or experienced myself so that I
Mm-hmm.
can get into detail and really talk about not just the theoretical, but the lived experience of doing those things. But I always end off with something that is practical. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it is how to be an impactful leader in your organization as an employee, a team member, or as a leader, a startup founder, there are practical steps that you take away that look at
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing today and what can you do ideally quickly within a few days, within a week, within a few weeks to get to where you want to be. So there's always a practical takeaway and a framework that people can use.
Wonderful. Yeah. Um, which rooms lights you up now? Benefits, HR, plans, digital health products, founder forums, and what outcome will they feel in 30 to 60 days?
So there are a few things. So with, of course, with employees, with patients, with the platform, we're seeing people who are having their health improved. The first part is understanding. So I understand where I am today. That's important. It's always important. The baseline. Where am I right now? Then what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Why am I motivated to do this? And what is the incentive? How am I going to feel when I get there?
Mm,
And then we want to help you get to that point. So the practical and what lights me up is taking people through that process and seeing them in a week or a month once a habit has been installed and they're able to really see the positive impact on their health. From a Sweep South perspective, the timeline is usually shorter. You're making a booking, you're signing up to work on the platform, or you're making a booking to have your home cleaned, and you are being able to within a day or a few days experience that transformation. Whether it's you've earned a bit of money working through the platform, and you can see that you have the ability to earn an income for your family, or you're someone who's busy and at home, and your house is being changed. I know intimately having three kids, the difference that it feels being in a home and trying to relax in a home that is an absolute mess and everything is upside down and you can't think straight because there's stuff
yeah,
everywhere
yeah, yeah,
versus
yeah.
a clean space to walk into. And so, what lights me up about all of these experiences is that change from baseline to transformation,
Mm,
and to something being changed for the better, and how that impacts how you feel about yourself and how you feel in that space.
okay. If you still have time, I give you some fireside questions, so to say. A daily habit that keeps you grounded.
Meditation practice every morning.
Which book do you give away most often?
The hard thing about hard things, I've read it three times, I think now. Ben Horowitz, such a brilliant on the ground uh, telling of what it's like to build a business, the most accurate. I give that to team members and to founders all the time. And then close
One.
second is Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. That's another one.
Oh,
I've got
wow.
about, I don't know, 50 pages bookmarked. Every second or third page is bookmarked in that book. And I also give that away quite a bit.
If people read my books, always red lines, marks. One piece of advice that you'd give your younger self.
Not to be so hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I I drive myself very hard, and I could have I used to. I'm getting better. A lot of negative self talk. Um, so just to be a little bit gentler on yourself, and to talk yourself up instead
Mm.
of talk yourself down.
If we invited you back in 10 years, what would you like to be known for? other than today, really?
Um, in 10 years, I think living life in a way that is um that has integrity, and where I care about other people, and I've done things that positively impact other people. Um,
Mm,
I don't think there isn't like a goal, a business goal that I think is more meaningful than that. I think what's really meaningful is like on a day-to-day basis, you live life and you engage with people in a way that was positive.
wow. What's one hype in tech or healthcare you think should be paused on?
Hmm. I think the over reliance on devices and gimmicks for health and for longevity. I
Mm-hmm.
think where people have to consult a watch or a phone or a ring for every single decision, as opposed to looking at themselves and saying, how do I feel?
Mm,
I think can be dangerous. So those things are great as an enhancement, but they are not um, the source of truth. Outsourcing how you feel to a device
mm.
is I think a problem for me.
Yep, I agree. But that's just me. What overlooked African innovation or maybe even cultural threat should Americans learn from?
I think there are two notions that Africans have that are super useful and super cool. I think the one is that because we've been faced with so many challenges in building over time and often have so many frustrations, the can do attitude, and I'm just going to build it or do it in the face of everything else. And I don't expect things to work perfectly, but I'm going to do it anyways. I think that attitude that we often have, and I think Nigerians, West Africans really typify that very well,
Mm,
is I'm not waiting on government. I'm not waiting on society. I'm just going to do it. Um, and I'm not going to ask for permission or try and make sure conditions are perfect. I think that's a great. I think it's a great. Um, I think it's a great quality to have, and I think particularly when things are not working. So
mm,
in America's case, for example, where if you feel like the government is not your government, or there's a lot of divisiveness or partisanship, I think that this is a perfect time not to be derailed on your mission. And then I think the second thing that we have is the notion of Ubuntu that
mm,
is obviously spoken about so much, but I think there's a lot of power in community and in not being overly individualized.
mm.
So helping a community, being of service to a community, but also benefiting from a community.
Absolutely.
And why I really like that is when you think about issues in the world and why should I care? It's because we're all connected and
Yeah.
because we will all feel the impact, even if it is just, the karmic impact. And I don't mean this in a woo-woo way. I mean, if you're reading about a world that is not well, if you're reading about war, if you're seeing that, the impact is negative on yourself. So understanding that we're so connected, whether we like it or not, I think it's for the better.
Mm,
It keeps us in our humanity.
mm.
And I think that sense is something that, especially today, the rest of the world can really benefit from.
One of my close friends and teachers always says we're all one, and may have all heard this, but he takes it to a complete different level. And there just one morning, woke up and just said, "Do you really mean I am that idiot as well?" So
Yes.
yes. Okay. So, phew, how do I make peace with this? So the Ubuntu, taking Ubuntu to a complete different level. So it's not only the idea of Ubuntu. If we affect somebody else, we're affecting us in any way,
Yeah.
positive and negative.
Yeah,
Is there one
absolutely.
belief?
And that idiot can teach you more about yourself
Yes,
than
yes,
person who you like the most.
yep,
Because why did they become an idiot? Are they really an idiot? What
yes,
makes me think that they're an idiot? Maybe it's something
yes.
about me. Maybe I'm the idiot. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there one belief in digital health you think is flat out wrong?
Yes, I think that the notion that all problems will be solved with one or a handful of companies is
Mm,
wrong. I think often people look and they go, oh, well, XYZ solves that. But health is a forever challenge and opportunity. That's one. And then the second is that machines will solve everything. And
uh,
again, going back to, I think that both from a how you feel and sensing how you feel, but also the ability to heal yourself. It's something that I believe and I think is maybe controversial, but very empowering, is that we have the ability to heal ourselves. And often we need to just step back and give ourselves the space and the tools, the nourishment, the sleep, the lack of stress, all of these things to actually heal ourselves. That's not to say there isn't a great place for medicine, but there is a role that the body, that the self has to play in the healing process as well. So it's not just about machines and doctors and surgeries um, and devices. We have to play an active role and should play an active role in our own healing as well.
overhyped, underused, or misunderstood? What's the most inconvenient truth?
I think that the most inconvenient truth is that responsibility lies with us.
Yep,
We want to blame everyone else. It's very tempting. Um, I think you first need to look at your own role. And again, it goes back to the lesson that I tell my kids is like, what is your role in this?
yep,
And are you being honest with
no,
yourself
no.
about what your role is in all of this? So, going back to the self and self agency is the most inconvenient truth, and ignoring distractions and understanding that most things outside of yourself are distractions.
One thing leaders should stop measuring to improve women's health.
So what we should start measuring better is how healthy people are, and how people are able to live healthy lives without all of these external interventions. I think that um, people should stop looking at how many pills you need to take, how many doctor's visits you need, and all of these things that sort of speak to the problem rather than root cause. I think at the end of the day, a healthy person is someone who, again, feels well, who eats well, who moves, who spends time in nature, who sleeps well, who has a low level of stress and is not
Mm,
generally stressed, who is not addicted to anything that is harmful, and who is part of an active community. Those, six or seven things are what define a healthy person. And those should be used as the benchmark, not again, how many pills you're taking and how many doctors you've seen and what is your cost on the healthcare industry. Those are all end stage. They're not sort of starting at first principles, root cause, baseline. So
mm,
the first question is, what does a healthy person look like?
beautiful. Yeah. A topic that hasn't been spoken of very often, but is coming more and more into our awareness, a menopause program. What do you think menopause program mistakes or many people are doing?
I'm glad people are talking about menopause. I think it's an important conversation to have. It is a big life shift that women go through and has an impact on themselves, their families, their community, their work. Um, and as the world population ages and as we live longer, people will be in menopause for longer.
Mm,
There are lots of misunderstandings about it. We understand that there is perimenopause, and then menopause is actually women are in menopause for a long time. Menopause is after 12 months after you have had your last period. So
mhm,
women who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s are all in menopause. It's not this short phase that you go through where you have hot flushes and maybe behave erratically and whatever, all of these myths about that phase of life. So I'm glad that it's been spoken about. I think firstly, the definition needs to be well understood. People still think of it as a short life phase. And I think it needs to be demystified because many, many women are living in menopause right now, and it's not this strange thing that people go through. Accompanying that, many people don't know men go through andropause, where you have a drop in testosterone levels. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And the impacts that that has on men's lives. The drop is gradual and it happens over time, and so it's usually less sort of drastic as the shift that women go through in estrogen levels. But I think that aging in general and the changes that people go through and the value that a quote unquote aged population has to give to the world. Going back to your point about retiring, why do
Mm,
people retire? You're at a point where you have less to lose and so much to give in terms of lessons learned and experience.
so true.
So I hope that menopause just gets incorporated with a greater appreciation for age and experience and what happens in life during later years and how to still be very productive and a contributing and active member of society in later years for both women and men.
I think we could go on for hours and hours and hours with questions. It is so inspiring to listen to you, and I hope that the people who are listening to the video or what I've probably decide to launch this also as a podcast will have fun in listening to this. So I'm closing with the last question, probably. Is there a microbiome claim that you don't buy into and one that you would defend?
I think, like with many things that come up and are very exciting, people can think the microbiome is everything. I've seen claims that everything is about, there is no actual brain and the microbiome is the actual brain and the thinking brain is determined by your microbiome. These things are all connected.
Uh,
And any practice or school of thought that tries to isolate one system as being the silver bullet or the key to everything is dangerous. We are connected systems. We are beings made up of connective systems. We are connected beings. And so the microbiome is incredibly important. It's tied to hormones. It's tied to the brain, of course. It's tied to cardiac health. It's tied to general wellness. It's influenced by so many things, but it's not the be all and end all. And anyone who tries to pretend that it is either trying to pull a fast one or they are mistaken themselves. Everything is connected.
Dr. Aisha Pandor, this was a beautiful talk. I really enjoyed every minute, every moment of it, besides some technical issues that we sometimes have. I am so grateful for the time that you had on a Saturday morning and we taking this from a family away. I am very grateful for the time, and I just can't thank you enough for this time that you gave us. And thank you so much. It was a beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed
Well,
it.
thank you very much. Thank you. The pleasure's been mine and really appreciated being able to talk through and think through some of these things with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.